In 31 years on the Borchamp estate, Hetty Cordy's had heard every kind of silence a kitchen could make, and the silence the kitchen had carried for the last 3 years was the one she had liked least. It was the silence of a room that had forgotten how to laugh. Hetty was the head cook. She had pressed loaves with the boss's mother, may she rest, and with his grandmother before that. On the September Monday, the new pantry assistant came in through the staff door with a canvas bag and a worn bread book. Hetty was the first to look at her properly, because Hetty had been waiting 3 years for the person who would walk into that quiet room and not, by some small kindness, take the quiet for granted. The girl was 24. The housekeeper's list said Annalise Verin. She came up from the village. Her hands were already kitchen calloused. Her dark hair was wound in a low bun and her white apron tied flat. She said good morning to every person at every station by name by the second day because she had asked their names on the first. The girl had not made a ceremony of it. She had asked the names the way some people ask the time. Aunt Florise Borchamp lived in the East Wing, 81 years old, sharp as a bell, and lonely the way the surviving women of great quiet families are lonely, without complaint and without company. The boss's mother had died 3 years before. The boss himself, Ravel Borchamp, traveled 11 months of the 12, came home for the Christmas week and the August week, and ran the family's business as cleanly as his father had. The estate ran without him. The household ran without him. No one in the household laughed without him either, but no one had noticed yet that this was the reason. In the first week, Annalise learned that Aunt Florise liked her bread crust dark, almost too dark, the way her own mother had baked it 70 years before. The housekeeper had mentioned it once in passing. By the Thursday, a small dark-crusted roll was on Aunt Florise's morning tray. By the second week, the dark-crusted roll was there every morning. Aunt Florise sent down no thanks because Aunt Florise was 81 and did not send thanks for bread. But she ate the bread, and she ate the next mornings too. Hetty, who could read a tray going up the back stairs and the same tray coming down, read it. In the second week, Annalise learned that Onel, the driver, took his coffee with 2 sugars and no milk and would not say so because he had been told once 20 years ago that he took it wrong. She put the sugars in the pot before she poured. He drank it. He looked at the cup. He looked at the pot. He drank the second the same way. By the third week, the cook who handled the morning beverages was putting the sugars in the pot before pouring, because Annalise had mentioned it to her, plainly, the way one cook mentions a small thing to another. Onel said nothing, but he set his cup down with the gentleness of a man who had not, in 20 years, been handed his coffee the way he liked it. In the third week, she learned that Petrus, the gardener, ate his lunch in his shed out of a tin his mother had packed him as a boy 53 years ago. Bread folded around hard cheese, an apple, a paper of salt, the apple on the top, the salt tucked inside the bread. The kitchen had been packing his tin for 2 decades with the apple on the bottom. Annalise, who had asked Petrus on the Monday what his mother used to do, packed it on the Tuesday the way his mother had. Petrus opened the tin at noon and sat a long minute on the upturned bucket before he ate. Hetty did not see this, the undergardener told her. She remembered. By the end of the first month, the kitchen was setting Aunt Florise's tray the way she liked it, putting the driver's sugars in the pot, packing the gardener's apple on top. None of these were the new girl's job. None were mentioned at the station meeting. They had simply over 4 weeks become how the kitchen was. Hetty noticed. The housekeeper, Mrs. Veresh, noticed. They did not speak of it. They were both old enough to know that some good things are best left to keep growing in the dark. In the third month, the boss came home. He was home for 2 weeks before Christmas, as he was every year. He took his meals in the small paneled dining room beside the East Wing parlor with Aunt Florise, as he did every year. On the second night, he came back from the dining room into the hall and met Mrs. Veresh on the stairs and asked her without ceremony why the great-aunt had smiled at supper. Mrs. Veresh, who was an honest woman, told him about the pantry assistant. He listened. He did not say anything. He went up the stairs and to bed. On the Tuesday of the second week, the kitchen was closing down for the night. The dishes were stacked, the aprons hung, the bread for morning rising under cloths on the long table. Annalise was at the deep sink in the back corner, sleeves rolled to her elbows, scrubbing the stockpot. Hetty was at her station with the order book in her hand, pretending to write down tomorrow's deliveries, because she had heard the staff side door open on the landing above and a footfall that did not belong to anyone in the kitchen. She knew the footfall. She had been a girl in this house when that footfall belonged to a smaller boy. The boss came down. He came through the staff stair into the kitchen in his shirt sleeves, his collar open one button, and stood at the bottom of the stair as if the smell of the room were a thing he had not been around in a long time. Hetty said nothing. The other cooks at their stations said nothing. Annalise at the sink did not turn because the water was running and she had not heard him. "Miss Varin," Ravel Borchamp said. Annalise turned. Her sleeves were wet to the elbow, her apron wet at the front, a smear of flour high on her cheekbone she did not know was there. She wiped her hands on the towel at her waist. She did not curtsy. She looked at him plainly, the way she looked at any person who said her name, and waited. "My great-aunt has been smiling at supper," he said. "I am told you know why." "I know the bread, sir," she said. "Mrs. Veresh told me in February the dark crust was hers." "Mrs. Veresh told you in February?" "Yes, sir." "And the coffee," he said, "in the pot?" "Arnold takes it with the 2 sugars, sir." "And the gardener's tin?" Petrus's mother packed the apple on the top. He stood at the foot of the stair with his hands at his sides. He looked, Hetty thought, like a man who had walked into a room he had not been in for a long time and found the chairs in slightly different places. He did not say anything for a while. The dishwater hissed against the side of the pot in the sink because Annalise had left the tap running. "Thank you," he said. "It was Mrs. Veresh, sir," Annalise said. "I only remembered what she told me." "Mrs. Veresh told a great many of us, Miss Varin," he said. "Thank you all the same." She inclined her head a half-inch. She did not say anything in return because she had been raised in a village where one did not contradict thanks, and she turned the tap off. He did not leave at once. He stood at the bottom of the stair as if he had forgotten the way back up. From the garden side of the room, a young cook said something low to her friend, and the friend laughed, a small, surprised laugh, the kind that breaks out of a person who has not had occasion to laugh in a quiet kitchen in years. The young cook clapped her hand over her mouth. The boss was looking at her. He was looking at the kitchen. He was looking at the warm room. "Good night, Miss Varin," he said. "Good night, Mrs. Cordy's, good night." He went up the staff stair. Hetty did not then or later ask the young cook what she had said. She wrote down the morning's deliveries. She closed the order book. She watched Annalise at the sink turn the tap back on to rinse the pot, and saw by the small set of the girl's shoulders that she had not understood that anything in particular had happened, because she had only answered a question about bread. In the 4th month the boss did a thing he had not done in 3 years. He did not fly out on the 2nd of January. He stayed through the 2nd week. On a Thursday afternoon, Mrs. Veresh drew Hetty into the small pantry corridor and told her, in the quiet voice the housekeeper used for matters between only the two of them, that the boss had asked her please not to promote the pantry assistant out of the kitchen against her wishes, if such an offer should come from any quarter. Mrs. Veresh said she had agreed. Hetty said she had agreed too. Hetty went back to her station and did not tell anyone, not even her husband at home that evening. In the 5th month Aunt Flores had the flu. It was not serious. The village doctor came twice, said warm broth and bed. But Aunt Flores on the 3rd afternoon sent down word she would like the pantry assistant to come up and read to her for an hour, because she had heard the girl read aloud at the staff carol service and had thought the girl read aloud well. Annalise went up at 3 on the Wednesday with the book Aunt Flores had asked for, a book of essays Aunt Flores had read at 21 and not since. She read until 4. The next afternoon she read until 4:30. The afternoon after that, when she came back down, the boss was in the kitchen. Because the boss had been sitting in the chair by his great-aunt's window the whole hour Annalise had been reading, and he had heard his great-aunt laugh at a paragraph about Italian post offices, and he had heard himself laugh twice. He took a cup of the soup off the stove and a piece of the dark-crusted bread, and ate them standing at the long table while the kitchen worked around him, the way his father had done when his father was a young man and not yet the head of the family. Hetty remembered that too. In the 6th month, on the 2nd Friday of December, the household gathered in the servants' dining hall to wrap the parish baskets. It was a tradition, 20 baskets every year for the village families on the parish keeper's list, brown paper and twine and a small handwritten card. The boss's mother had wrapped them every year of her marriage, the boss's grandmother before her. For the last 3 years the kitchen had wrapped them alone, because the family had not, since the boss's mother died, come down to the servants' dining hall to help. The boss paid for the parcels. He did not anymore attend. Annalise had organized the table that year. She had cut the brown paper into 20 squares, wound the twine into 20 small loops, set the cards at one end in a stack with the pen beside them, set the parcels at the other end ready for wrapping. The kitchen came in at 7. Arnold came in. Petrus came in. The undergardeners came in. Mrs. Veresh came in with Aunt Flores on her arm because Aunt Flores had announced at lunch that the flu was over and she would, this year, wrap the cards in her own hand. The hall filled. The rapping began. Ravel Borchamp came down at 7:15 through the staff stair in his shirt-sleeves with no jacket, and stood at the foot of the stair the way he had stood that Tuesday in October. Hetty saw him first. She set down her twine. The hall did not at once go quiet because Annalise at the head of the table was passing a length of brown paper down the line without looking up, and the work was going. The boss crossed the hall to the table. He pulled out the chair at the head, the chair Annalise had left empty there without saying why, and he sat in it. Aunt Florise looked at him. He looked at his grey tant. Aunt Florise's mouth moved the small, soft way an old woman's mouth moves when she has waited a long time for a thing, and the thing has, without fanfare, arrived. Annalise passed him a roll of brown paper without looking up. He took it. She passed him a length of twine. He took that too. He set the paper on the table and folded it the way he had been shown as a boy by his mother and her mother before her, and tied the twine and slid the parcel down the line to the cards. Petrus at the cards wrote a name on the small white card in his careful, slow gardener's hand. Aunt Florise wrote the next. Onel wrote the next. The hall worked. Somewhere down the table the young cook from the October Tuesday laughed at something her friend said, and this time she did not clap her hand over her mouth, because no one in the hall was a person whose presence required her to clap her hand over her mouth any more. The boss heard the laugh. He did not look up. He folded another paper. He tied another twine. He was, Hetty thought, the most still person at the table, and at the same time the most present person at the table, and these were not contradictions. They worked 2 hours, 20 parcels, 20 cards. The hall did not empty until 10. Aunt Florise was the first to go up on Mrs. Veresh's arm, kissing Annalise on the forehead at the door as if she were the daughter of an old friend and not the kitchen's junior cook. Onel went second. Petrus went third. The young cooks went in 2s and 3s, calling soft good nights, and the hall was, by 10:15, only Hetty at the far end stacking the empty twine cones, Annalise at the head of the table folding the last sheet of brown paper, and Ravel Borchamp at the head chair with his hands folded loosely in front of him. He spoke very quietly. Hetty at the far end was not meant to hear, she heard. "Miss Varon," he said, "Annalise." "Sir." "I would like you to stay in this house," he said, "not in service. In it, choose the shape of your life inside it. I would like to be where you are." She did not at once answer. She finished folding the sheet of brown paper. She set it on the stack. She set her hands flat on the table the way a woman who has decided a thing sets her hands when she is about to say it. She looked up. "I would like to stay," she said. "I would like that too." He inclined his head. He did not then reach for her hand because he was not the sort of man who took a thing he had asked for in the same breath as the asking. He stood up. He folded the chair back under the table the way one folds a chair one means to return to. He said good night plainly to her and to Hetty, for no boss of any great quiet family is unaware of who is at the far end of a room. He went up the staff stair. Annalise stood for a moment with her hands flat on the table. Then she lifted them. She gathered the last of the cards. She set them in the small box for Mrs. Veresh to take in the morning. Hetty, at the far end with the empty twine cones in her arms, sat down on the bench against the wall, very carefully, and wept into the cone of twine she had been about to set on the shelf, wept the way a woman of 31 years in a kitchen weeps when the room she has loved for all of those years has, in one winter evening, become whole again. Annalise did not see her cry. Annalise went out across the cold yard to the staff cottage, and did not look back, because she had been taught, in the village, that a woman who has been asked a great question goes home alone for the first night, and lets the question settle into the shape of the rest of her life. In the morning the kitchen ran. Aunt Florise came down for breakfast in the panelled dining room, which she had not done in 3 years, and asked plainly for the dark-crusted bread. The boss came down too, which he had not done on a December Saturday in 3 years, and asked for a second piece. Onel brought the car around at 9. Petrus weeded the kitchen garden. The kitchen worked. And the household around Hetty Cordy's, who had pressed loaves with 3 generations of Borchamp women now, was, in a way it had not been for 3 winters, whole.